Hi, I'm Paul and I'm the founder of Odds Monkey. My role involves looking at the product and how we can make it better, and that tends to involve speaking a lot to our customers. Recently, we've seen quite a few questions crop up around verification and compliance. So today, we've come to Smarkets and I've brought along our Head of Communities, Bushra. So today, we're going to ask a few questions, learn a little bit about compliance from the Smarkets compliance team, and hopefully answer a few of your most frequently asked questions.
So the purpose of today's video is to address the questions and concerns that you've sent over on the Facebook community. And what better way to do that than with our partners at Smarkets? So thank you very much for joining us today, guys. We've got Stacey and we've got Rich from the compliance team.
Hi, I'm Stacey. I'm Head of Compliance Operations at Smarkets.
Hi, I'm Rich. I'm a Safer Gambling Officer at Smarkets.
Hi. So without further ado, let's get started. So can you tell us a little bit about KYC and why is it needed?
Absolutely. So KYC is an umbrella term. It means know your customer, and it refers to a number of verification checks that we have to do to make sure we know our customer does what it says on the tin. So when you hear KYC used, it actually generally refers to the first type of check that we do when someone registers. Yeah. So that's just to make sure that you are who you say you are and that you're over the age of 18.
And what exactly is the process? How long does it take?
So in most cases, this is instant because we can do it electronically. But if that's unsuccessful, then we will have to ask for documents, namely a proof of ID item and a proof of address item.
What type of documents would you be asking for?
So a proof of ID, that's something like a driving license or a passport. Proof of address, that's something like a recent utility bill in your name.
So what happens to the documents once they've been submitted by the customer? Because obviously it's very personal information. Is it shared? What type of protection have they got?
Yep, so we take security really seriously. There's two ways of sharing your documents with us. We have a document uploader on site, which will go straight up into our back office system. And then you can also attach documents to emails. When the documents get to us, they are encrypted. And very few people have an encryption key. Only people that are doing these checks that need access to your documents have it. And aside from this, we are audited annually. So we're audited, it's a technical standards audit, and security is quite a big feature of that.
Yeah, I'm sure many people would appreciate that and feel reassured.
And with those documents, I know in the past I used to get utility bills through the post, but a lot of those are online now.
Yep.
Can you accept online versions? Is there specific formats that are acceptable or not?
Yeah, absolutely. So online is even better. So if you log into your online account, you'll be able to access your previous bills, and you can download a PDF version of that and share it with us. PDF version is the best version to share because the image quality is going to be good. We know we can see the whole document. So yeah, that's a very good way of sharing documents with us.
And if you do have a hard copy, what's the process there? Do you take a photo of it? Because I know that some people might not have a scanner to sort of scan it professionally.
Yeah, and again, photos are actually better than scanning. The quality of an iPhone nowadays is actually better than a scan. So the things that I would say, just make sure we can see all four corners. I know that sounds bizarre, but when it comes to us verifying a document, there are a number of different things that we look for, so it's best if we can see the whole thing. Make sure nothing's covered or redacted. If you do have concerns about there's something on the document that you don't want to share, just talk to us and we'll try and work around it with you.
What if Smarkets asks the member for documentation which they are not really happy to provide? Can they refuse under GDPR?
Absolutely. If we're asking you for things that you're not comfortable sharing, just be honest with us, and then we can advise you in the next steps. This might mean that we can't offer you an account, just because if we can't complete the checks that we need to under our license obligations, that would mean that we're not compliant. So the best thing to do, just tell us, be open with us. We can let you know whether that means we'll have to terminate your account or not.
Well, is there any type of alternatives that customers can send through that might satisfy those checks?
If there is, we will definitely advise you. Some things are a bit non-negotiable. We have to have them to satisfy our license conditions. Other things, maybe there is something else that we might be able to suggest that you'll be comfortable sharing with us.
And I've heard the term source of wealth checks being mentioned quite a lot in the community. Can you just clarify what that is and why it's needed?
Yeah, absolutely. So source of funds and source of wealth checks, these actually sit under that KYC umbrella as well, but they are just a little bit of a more in-depth check under the Know Your Customer initiative. So they specifically refer to us having to verify that the funds that you're using to deposit with us are coming from a legitimate source. And what does that mean? It's thrown around a lot. It actually means it's not the proceeds of crime. You're getting that from your job at XYZ. So we're expected to know this. So we might have to ask you questions around what you do for a living and how you earn your income. but we're also expected to evidence it. And this is where we start asking for things like payslips and bank statements.
And so what happens when a customer signs up and they've deposited cash and then they're required to do one of these checks and then they're requested to send through all this documentation and they don't have something, they just simply can't access it or they just don't have it? What happens to their funds?
Again, this is really, really common. We're so used to customers either not being able to complete a check or not wanting to complete a check.
Yeah.
The next steps, just be honest with us, say that I'm never going to be able to provide you with this, or I'm never going to want to provide you with this. We'll let you know how we can close down your account and sort out a balance refund for you.
So we've received some very specific questions from our members in the Facebook community. And just to start off, I have been trying for several months to get my account verified and source of wealth checks done. Every time I email support, I get a standard response, which isn't very helpful. Why is this, and what do I need to do to fix this?
So this makes me really unhappy to hear. As a customer, I'm sure everyone's had that experience when they feel like they're not being listened to. So this really, that gets me. What I would suggest, it's hard for me to advise without knowing the specific circumstances or what the standard response is saying. But what I would advise is, these are humans at the other end of the email. So just tell them quite clearly, this isn't helpful to me. Can you either explain in another way, or if it's actually what they are saying is unhelpful, we have a complaints process. So if you're really unhappy with the service that you're being provided, give us the opportunity to improve, give us the opportunity to learn where we went wrong, use that complaints process.
And if they're struggling to get a response or they don't feel like they're being heard, is there any way that, any different way they can get in contact with your team to try and understand better sort of how to progress the situation?
Yeah, so we're actually happy to share a link with you guys so that you can talk to us. We have a few slots. They are quite limited. We are a small team, we are a small company, but we really do want to actually talk to your customers. So if you are struggling with your source of funds checks, if you do want to speak to someone specifically about your account, we'll share a link with you guys. You can book in a 15-minute call with one of us. You might even get me if we're shorthanded.
That would be amazing. That sounds great. Yeah.
So another member has asked us another question surrounding the source of wealth checks. Why is my account suspended during these checks? Do I still have access to my funds?
So this is an interesting one because we don't actually suspend accounts straight away. We do always send an email first. And we do understand that people don't always man the emails, potentially the email addresses they use for websites. They aren't their main email that they get alerts for. What I would say is do keep an eye on your inbox, because if ever we have to do a check on your account, we will send you an email straight away. Eventually, if we don't hear back from you, then your account may become suspended.
Another question regarding source of wealth checks, a very popular topic today. During a source of wealth check, I was asked regarding a personal transaction on my bank statement that has no relation to my match betting. Why is that?
So going back to the reason for the check and what we're doing. So the reason we do the check is because we're verifying that the funds used with our website are legitimate. So maybe we might have to ask some clarifications around your income, and maybe we might have to clarify whether a transaction is income. What I would say is it's not specifically about your betting transactions. If you recall the wider sense of why we're doing the check, we might have to ask additional questions sometimes that seem at odds with what we're doing.
And what I think is probably quite important for our customers to understand is the reasons that you're doing this, and you're not trying to be awkward or make their life difficult. There is part of it that I guess is a responsibility to the customer to make sure that that everything's okay, but also that there's obviously rules and regulations that you've got to follow to make sure that
And absolutely, you're willing to ask us, why are you asking me? Like I said, we are humans on the other side of the email address. If you feel that we're asking for something unreasonable, talk to us. If we can share the answer with you, we definitely will do.
What sort of tips can you give us to share with our members as to make the verification process easier?
I think the best tip that I can give is just remembering that actually the purpose of the check and what we're looking for. So we're specifically looking to verify your income, how you earn your income, and to make sure that the funds used on our website are from a legitimate source. And if you keep that in mind, alongside the documents that we ask for, we can generally complete a check a lot quicker.
Some of the requirements for the source of wealth checks are intrusive. Not even my mortgage advisor or bank asks for some of them. Why do I need to provide these to an exchange?
I completely empathise with this sentiment. For us, what I would say is we are doing what we feel is necessary to meet our licence obligations in light of our experience with the regulator, in light of the enforcement action that is publicly announced quite often. We're doing what we feel is right to remain compliant.
Many of the members feel that a lot of the documentation that's asked by Smarkets tends to be a lot more intrusive, a lot more demanding than the other exchanges. Why is that? Why is it that Smarkets is asking for a little bit more than the others?
So it's a bit of a two-part answer to this one. Firstly, I maybe don't think that we are. I think that there is a lot of similarities with what operators asked for, having worked for a few. I have a team member that will be on later talking about how best to position yourself to pass these checks. He has gone through the experience very recently with a similar website, and that was exactly the same request that we're making. Is there variances in what people ask for? I have no doubt, because there isn't a set guide of how we conduct these checks. Our license conditions say that we must do them. They don't say how we have to do them. So it really is up to us to find what feels right for us in a compliant way. I don't doubt that there are differences. I haven't seen massive differences personally, but that definitely doesn't mean that your users aren't experiencing them. Mm-hmm. This just happens when you don't have a definitive guide of how to do things.
So another question we've received is, I've been asked for documentation, which I have provided, and shown proof that I'm match betting, and then get asked for more and more intrusive documentation. Why didn't my initial document suffice?
So it depends why we're asking for more documentation. Is it to finish the check that we've got going at the moment? Or is it because maybe a few months has passed since, maybe something in your activities changed and we need to check in again? This isn't a once and done thing. We do have to be really aware of when customers' behaviour patterns change, because again, this can be a sign of problem gambling, for example, and we should be checking in and making sure everything's okay. It's very much not a one-stop shop and done, and we do have to be constantly monitoring customers and asking for documentation where possible, or where required is what I would say. The thing with match betting is a lot of the activity of match bettors, it kind of crosses over with your markers of harm, what might look like problem gambling if we don't know that you're match betting, for example. And also, just because we've verified that you're match betting previously doesn't always mean that problem gambling might not develop later on. Mm-hmm. And I know that this isn't the case for most gamblers, but there are actually a select few who really do have problems. So if your activity changes, if your activity spikes, we are required to check in, and that might involve asking you to verify match betting again. Just talking specifically about match betting, there are reasons why match bettors might be more at risk of problem gambling. So an example of this is you're privy to a lot of marketing offers. People might try and cross-sell you casino offers. We know that casino products can be more risky, so you've got exposure to that. Also, from a profit sense, you might see that you would make more profit if you weren't backing your bets elsewhere. If you just had your lay bets on the exchange, it might be tempting. If you do that, you are then just a gambler. So we do have to be quite attuned. Just because you're match betting, that definitely doesn't mean that our responsibilities end.
Another question that we've received from our member is, my deposit limit with Smarkets is very low. For example, £110 a month, which obviously makes their match betting quite difficult to do. I proved that I'm a match better, and I was still refused an increase. Why is that?
So sometimes we do have to proactively limit accounts. We have to use deposit limits and loss limits. Again, this is part of our social responsibility obligations. I know that this is frustrating, and it's frustrating for us and customers, but this is something we have to do with customers' best interests at heart and to ensure that we remain compliant.
I understand, but if they've proven that they're match betting, and they're proving they're backing and laying their bets, £110 a month makes their match betting experience really difficult, if anything, verging on impossible.
So we do take into consideration match betting profits when we do these kinds of checks. So what I would say is we would always set a limit that is in line with what we've seen. If you feel that this isn't representative, just reach out to us, explain why, and we'll maybe discuss some alternatives, some extra documents you might be able to provide, some extra information that we maybe don't have to make that limit more representative of your circumstance.
My partner and I both match bet. Why can't we just share one exchange account? It makes things so much easier.
So this, going back to the Know Your Customer initiative, if there's more than one account holder, it makes things very hard for us to complete those obligations. We're talking about 2 checks to make sure we know who you are, 2 sets of source of funds checks potentially, and then that's without getting into our safer gambling obligations. How do we know which activity is for which member? Could one of you be experiencing harm? There's a number of reasons why this isn't operationally feasible, even though I know it makes so much sense if you're a user and if that's how you use your account. But unfortunately, from a compliance perspective, it is against our terms and conditions if we do see people that are using accounts for more than one person, we do have to close them.
Say somebody has previously failed the source of wealth check. Does that mean that they can never have an account with Smarkets, or can they have their account reinstated in the future if they do provide the documentation required?
Yeah, absolutely. So get in touch with us. Like I said, it's really hard to talk about specific cases and give good guidance in specific cases. So give us a call. If this is you and you want to reopen your account and you feel like maybe we didn't handle your checks well last time, or you're willing to cooperate with us now, give us a ring, email the team, and we'll tell you exactly what we need, and we will try and work with you to get you back on site.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time today, Stacey.
Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, it's enlightened me, and I think hopefully understanding a little bit about what your team do and the reasons why you're doing it will help our members understand better and appreciate, and hopefully be able to give you the information that you need to keep their accounts open.
Thanks.
Hi, Rich. Thanks for joining us again. We've got a couple of questions that might be best suited for you. So if I kick off, I've got one here. During the checks, I got sent a request to show the back bets that correspond with the lay bets. Why do you need these? I often can't locate the back bets as it was a while back and I have so many bookie accounts and place a lot of bets. What can I do to satisfy this check?
Okay, so people who use the exchange are not your traditional customers. And a lot of them are using the exchange to lay off bets that they've placed elsewhere. So on the exchange, we only see, the losses that are being made. So when that happens, we want to make sure that the process is being followed correctly and that these bets are being backed elsewhere. So we do that because we want to make sure that people are not, genuinely losing money and potentially, developing a gambling problem from it. Because, sometimes that can happen. People can just lay the bets and not back elsewhere. So this is purely to keep, the customer safe, make sure that they're spending within their means and make sure that they're following the process correctly.
Yeah, so I guess from your point of view, just us customers telling you that they're matched betting isn't enough, because there's a chance that it could be a problem gambler just using that as a way to try and bypass checks. So we need to go through that process of trying to find evidence.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I mean, we can speak to people on the phone and they can, confirm that they're match betting and they're comfortable with what they're doing and the losses are covered elsewhere. But obviously we can't take them on their word, which is why we ask for this evidence. This is why we need to check that everything is being covered.
So is there anything that our customers could do to help with that? I mean, I'm guessing in an ideal world, they'd take a screenshot of every back bet that they place, but that's probably a bit of an extra overhead that people don't want to do ideally. But while they've still got access to their bookmaker accounts, I'm guessing it should be possible to log back in and then search their statement to just show you evidence that they placed that back bet.
So I actually went through this process myself with another operator quite recently. So from a customer point of view, I can understand why people get frustrated.
So you're a match better yourself?
I'm a match better myself, right. And I've also gone through the process of being documentation verified recently. What I would say to people is just keep track of everything you're doing. So if you're placing bets in store, just take a photo or get a printout of some sort. Obviously, they're the ones that are more tricky because you don't get evidence of those bets unless you get a copy of it somehow. Then with your online accounts, what you want to do is you want to have your P&L side by side with your account details, get a screenshot of that, just keep that up to date.
And just touching on that, the P&L, so what would count as a valid P&L? Because some of our customers might use our profit tracker on our site, which tracks their bets. Some of them might have their own custom spreadsheets. What isn't acceptable? Is that something you can share with us? Or
I mean, the P&L with the bookmaker, so with the operator that I went through, they wanted to specifically see the P&L for all the accounts that I had, and it's purely just a way of making sure that the money that's coming in is covering the money that's going out.
So that's just a record of all your matched betting activity.
Sometimes what will happen, and I actually was proactive with this, I actually had a back bet that won quite a substantial amount of money, which obviously meant a lot of money come out of the exchange. So I took a screenshot of that and actually sent it to the operator before they'd even asked for it, just saying, look, this is covered. So the thing is, what I would say is keep on top of it, especially if you make larger losses. Just make sure it's all, make sure it's all there, make sure you've got evidence of it. And it just makes the process so much easier, because then when you're asked for it, even if you've had accounts that are closed, if you've still got that evidence, it just helps the process.
Yeah, I think that's really, really valuable information, and obviously, sending people the information before they even ask for it is ideal. But I guess that's the benefit of working as in the compliance team and knowing what's likely to be coming down the road.
I've had so many phone calls and things, and as soon as it was quite a large loss, the exchange is showing that loss. They don't know that's what I'm doing. So I actually contacted them and said, look, here is the bet in question.
Yeah.
And that was actually around the time where I was asked for evidence of my funds.
Yeah, and I guess the size of that bet just shows it's a really good example of just looking at that from one side as the exchange would see it. It looks like you've lost a lot of money there. Being able to evidence that that's not the case, is really important to make sure that you guys are doing what you need to.
And that's exactly it. I mean, we talk to people a lot on the phone, and we explain this to them. We just say, look, from our point of view, all we're seeing is you're making losses. And we just want to make sure, and a lot of people, are quite open to that, and they actually say, we really appreciate you making these calls and checking in, because and even people we speak to on the phone sort of are aware of the fact that it can potentially, turn into a bit of a problem for people.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's kind of become more apparent to myself and Busher, having listened to people, talked to people, chatted with you guys, is that just because you've proved your matched betting doesn't mean that these checks are over, because you being a matched better, you lay every bet, and while we're trying to sort of look at the overall picture, if you just look at the lay bets, most of them will probably lose. So the last thing we want is any customers to be looking at that and think, well, I'm not going to put the back bets on. But there's obviously that potential, and you guys need to make sure that no match better is progressing to
change, can't they?
Yeah, and I think this is conversations that potentially have been had before, where as you say, lay bets more often than not do win. So people then think, well, I mean, the amount of the times I've had customer conversations, and they said, oh, if I weren't match betting, I'd be so and so in profit, and obviously
I think that's the danger, and especially like you said, when they've got a P&L, it's easy for them just to look at the lay bets and think, right, if I hadn't backed those bets, I'd be in profit. But 100%, we would never recommend that. The whole idea of match betting, and the reason it works for so many people is that you lay the bet and you back the bet, and they cancel each other out, and hopefully with a small profit there as well, or access to a promotion. We definitely wouldn't ever recommend not backing your bets or not laying your bets.
So can you tell us a little bit about timeframes? Because we've got, people that match bet more times than others, and potentially could be thousands of bets that they've placed that they've got to go through. So how far back do you normally go for your checks?
Okay, so we're very aware of this, and with match bettors, if they're very active, they can have many accounts with many bets. So we look at around a week or so, and then what we'll do, we'll request some bets. If for some reason they can't access them bets, or they can't find those bets, we will ask for maybe some other examples. But if they can't show that these bets are being covered, then we won't classify them as a match better when undertaking these checks.
Okay, so you said you might there be able to ask for different bets, and that's kind of down to you guys if you did, but it's very much that our customers would need to provide evidence of the bets that you're asking us for, and not just, oh, I haven't got those bets, but I can provide you some different ones. It has got to be the specific ones that you're answering for.
And it's specifically because we want to check that all of the bets are being placed. What we don't want is, we don't want someone to say, oh, actually that was just a whatever, on a whim sort of thing. We want to make sure that I can say that this one was placed there, this one was covered there. And obviously then they can match up, and then we can see that this is being followed properly.
Yeah, awesome. And I mean, that's good, because that kind of aligns with the Odds Monkey view as well, that we obviously want all of our customers, that's what we try and teach our customers to do through our education process, is to back and lay your bets. So and that's all of them. Never take any chances.
Agreed. So what advice would you give our members, like the ultimate advice to get through this verification process as easily as possible, as seamlessly as possible? What would you tell them?
So from my experience, when I went through it, make sure all your documents are in the correct format. That is one of the things that a lot of people get frustrated about, if they're sending it in the wrong format, and it can tend to hold up the process.
So have you got any examples of what the wrong format might be? Like, because I mean, I know we've mentioned previously PDFs, and I know a lot of banks and that will let you download a PDF, and that's perfect as I understand.
Yeah.
What sort of incorrect formats would you get?
So what a lot of people do is they try and take screenshots of bank statements and things like that, which is not accepted. We want PDF. Okay. And then in terms of screenshots and things like that, that's your P&L and your customer details online, and then in-store bets, photos or some sort of printout or any sort of evidence if you're betting in shop, which is obviously harder to is harder to prove, which also can become a sticking point for people.
Okay, and is there any sort of common reoccurring issues that you see crop up when customers are providing information that you can give our users some advice on so they can try and avoid it?
I think one of the ones that comes up quite often is when we're asking for three months worth of bank statements. They tend to maybe only send one, for example, and that can hold things up. So what we want 3 months worth of bank statements. A lot of match bettors I've spoken to use different accounts to keep their money separate. So then we may need to see those ones as well. So it is quite specific to each individual case of what we need.
So in that situation, they might be using one bank account for their matched betting to keep everything organised, but then you might be able to prove something else like their income, which is going to a different bank account. So you might then need to see both sets of bank statements.
That's
right?
Exactly it. Yeah.
Okay.
So income into an account and deposits to Smarkets, and then they may have a separate account where they're transferring between the both to obviously fund their other accounts. So we would need to see all that.
Mm-hmm. Right, I think that's probably about it for the questions that we've got. I'd like to say thanks again. It's been amazing coming in and picking your brains and learning a lot about the sort of verification and compliance process. If we get any more questions, and if anyone's watching this, feel free to post comments and we can do this again and feedback any other questions. I know we've touched on the opportunity to try and connect people that are struggling to progress their case and set up those one-to-ones. So we'll continue those discussions and we'll share details in our communities about how we can access those. And thanks again for having us and answering all our questions.
Absolutely. So leave your comments below, guys, if you have any questions, and we'll be sure to put a point of contact with Smarkets. So if you guys have any questions, you can speak directly to them. And so thank you very much for your time today, Rich.
Thank you.
It's been amazing.
And the members really appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope you found it helpful, and hopefully it's uncovered a few of the mysteries and confusion around verification and compliance, and hopefully that helps.